think everyone's here and we're ready to get going. So why don't I go ahead and call the regular meeting of the Temple City City Council, February 2nd, 2021 to order. The disclaimer, of course, pursuant to Section 3 of Executive Order N29-20, issued by Governor Newsom on March 17th, 2020. Cities are allowed to hold city council meetings via teleconferencing, and members of the public can observe and address the meeting telephonically or electronically. So if we could start with roll call, Madam Clerk.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Mann?
Here.
Councilmember Sternquist?
Cindy, your mic's off.
Councilmember Sternquist?
Yes. Can you hear us?
You.
Can you hear us?
Councilmember Vizcarra?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Yu?
I'm here.
Mayor Chavez?
Well, as you can see, Pastor Kelty, we do all, I think, look forward to coming back live. We don't have these technical problems as much as we do now that we do when
Can anyone hear Tom?
I can hear him.
Yeah.
No one's ever had a problem hearing me though, so I'm not worried about that.
Okay, so who is anybody cannot? It sounds like Cynthia is the only one that can't hear me. So Cynthia, it's yours. Brian, can somebody call her maybe and help her out there? Okay. We're gonna call you, Cindy. Maybe this would be a good time to learn sign language. What do you think? We could do it that way. All right. Okay. Well, why don't we go forward with our invocation? And of course, we're all pleased to have again our Pastor Daryl Kelty from the Community of Christ Church, located at 9468 Broadway, right here in Temple City. And Pastor Kelty is kind enough to provide our invocation for us this evening. So, Pastor, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. Oh, our divine creator, we are your children gathered more or less in person through Zoom, whatever it is, to do the business of this city, a city that we all love and seek the best for. We know that these times of chaos that we can do very little on our own. Therefore, we seek your guidance, dear Lord, that we might have the wisdom and the knowledge to do and step forward in faith to build a better city. We do not know what the future will bring, dear Lord, but we do know that as we work together, though we may be separated, we always are hand in hand with you in no separation. May we, dear Lord, in doing what best we can, bring to this city and this community, this state and this nation, that unity of purpose which we so long and so love, has been so lacking these many years. May we, dear Lord, look forward to the future, a brighter future, a better future, a happier future, a joyous future, would be our prayer and invocation in thy Son's most precious name. Amen.
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 Thank you, Pastor Kelty, and certainly our prayers are with you and your congregation. Stay safe out there, and hope to see you soon.
Look forward to it.
Thank you. Okay, if we will all please stand for our Pledge of Allegiance. Maybe our clerk can have that flag up there for us. There we go. Okay, ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. You may be seated. Okay, so we will now move on to item 5, our ceremonial matters. There are none this evening, and we will now move on to item 6, which are public comments. City Council will now hear public comments regarding items not listed on the agenda. I will begin by asking our city clerk if there are any email requests to speak at this time.
Yes, Mayor Chavez, I have two email requests. One is a announcement for the library event, and the other one is a public comment email.
Okay, so why don't you go ahead and proceed with those?
Okay. With your permission, I'd like to start with the library announcement. Good evening, Mayor Chavez and City Council. This email is from Jean Lee, Temple City Library. She would like to give an update on library services. Since the start of the sidewalk service in July 2020, the Express Library remained very busy. On average, they receive more than 1,500 phone calls per month. In November, they work with the Temple City School District and issue over 5,000 library cards to all the students in the district. In addition to the whole services that they offer, they now have 6 Chromebooks and wireless hotspot kits for checkout. Library users 18 over can check out the kit to access the internet. Requests for these kits can be made using their online catalog or over the phone, and the loan period is the same as the books, 3 weeks, with the option to renew if available. Tax season is here, and if there's a need for tax forms, the public can give the library a call and they will print out the form free of charge, up to 10 pages per day. On additional note, the new Live Oak Library, located at 22 West Live Oak Avenue, Arcadia, starts sidewalk services today. For more information, please visit the county library website at lacountylibrary.org. While the library is closed to the public, staff are available to answer questions by phone 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. Tuesday. Their phone number is 626-285-2136. And our second public comment email is from Jonathan Hawes. Good evening. My name is Jonathan Hawes. I serve as El Monte City Clerk from 2013 to 2018. Since 2015, I have been a whistleblower on Andre Quintero and Team El Monte embezzlement of $10 million from the El Monte Promise Foundation Scholarship Fund. I have interviewed dozens of El Monte residents who have privately confirmed that the Promise funds were used for fraudulent trips to Vietnam and Haiti, a bogus
Is anybody there?
house repairs, and other criminal activities. I have myself been interviewed by the FBI about 24 times. Documents providing the embezzlement have been submitted to the FBI and the district attorney's office and are now available to the public online. I'm asking the Temple City Council to call out these crimes and protect the vulnerable residents of one of the poorest cities in Southern California. El Monte children who should have been provided with college scholarships were robbed. Andre Quintero and Team El Monte members must go to prison. If you have any questions, please call or text me at 626-863-2143. Thank you. Those are the comments.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anybody online? If so, I'd like you to unmute their microphones.
We do have one caller online. Their microphone is unmuted.
Okay, and would that caller like to speak at this time?
Yes, this is Dawn Tarrant.
Hi, Don.
Hi.
Oh,
Hi, how
hi,
are you?
Dawn.
Hello, everybody. I miss seeing everyone. I thought I'd take the time to, with my Camellia Festival director hat on, and to let the public know what's going on this year. So this year's event's going to be virtual. Our coronation will be premiered on Saturday, February 13th at 7 p.m. Then on Saturday, February 27th at 10 a.m., we're going to premiere our parade. All of this is online with our Royal Court of First Graders, our Grand Marshals, Bert Ferntile and Matt Byers, as well as other notable guests with commentary and performances. And while we can't have all of our wonderful organizations in the parade and all of our youth, there's still there's a couple of opportunities for the youth to become involved. This year's theme is Everyday Heroes, and we want to hear from the youth in our community who their heroes are. They can do that by emailing the Camellia Festival a photo holding a sign telling us who their hero is. The photo will be shared the week leading up to the parade. In addition, we are having a miniature float contest with trophies, medals, and cash prizes, which are submitted by video and will be shown at 9 a.m. on parade day. All the information is available on the Camellia Festival website. It's CameliaFestival.org. There's also information in the Temple City Life edition that was just released, which is available online, or you can pick it up outside the City Council chambers. And I'd also like to thank the council and the City of Temple City for their continued support of the festival. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Don. Appreciate that information, and we all look forward to the different events that are coming up. So we're all excited about that. Thank you and your staff for all the work that you've done to keep this event alive this year. Okay, so unless there's anyone else, I will go ahead and close public comments. We will now move on to item 7, our consent calendar. And all consent calendar items may be approved in a single motion as recommended unless removed for further discussion. We have a motion.
Mayor Chavez, I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Unless there's any objection, I'll ask the city clerk for a roll call, please.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Mann,
Yes.
Councilmember Sternquist,
Yes.
Councilmember Vizcarra,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Yu,
Yes.
Mayor Chavez.
Yes. Okay. So that passes unanimously. We will now move on to item number 8, a public hearing. Item A is to allocate additional community development block grant funds for fiscal year 2020-2021 small business grant program and establish the community development block grant programs and allocations for fiscal year 2021-22. And so will we begin then with Mr. Cook?
Yes, and Mr. Glick will, from our Community Development Department, will be giving the presentation. First, I'd just like to say thank you to the staff and the council for your support of this program. Staff, along with Adam, Ashley, Scott, have worked, and Ileana and Tinny have worked very hard across the board, but kudos to Ashley and Adam for really working through with the community. We've had some challenges, which you're aware of, and Mr. Gulick will talk about a little bit today. But overall, we have a lot of successes in how we've helped the community. So, with that, we are coming to you with an adjustment to the current fiscal year's community block grant program, and talk to you about some of those challenges that we've had. And then talk to you about what would be proposed for the fiscal year 21-22 budget program. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Gulick.
Thank you, City Manager, council members, other people on the line. So just a kind of brief background. Last June, the City Council established the COVID-19 pandemic relief programs for fiscal year 2021. In September 1st, the staff brought back an update for the 2 programs regarding the COVID-19 pandemic relief programs. And January 4th, the LA County Development Authority reached out to city staff about possibly participating in round 2 of their LACDA City Small Business Grant Program. So the city did 2 public notices for this item tonight on January 7th and 25th. So just kind of a recap of the 2 COVID-19 pandemic relief programs. The temporary rental assistance, the city has processed 65 or assisted 65 low-income households. We have gone through a lot of different channels in trying to get people to apply for the program. We posted on our social media. We've kind of tried to target some locations that we received applications from, or locations that have a lot of units. And as of right now, there's 6 remaining grants that could be issued. And I think we have 5 right now that Ashley is working with and processing right now. As for the small business grant program, we did our intake of applications with a deadline in July, I believe. 151 businesses submitted interest forms through our website. Only 123 of those were located in Temple City. We were able to approve 6 grants so far for this program. And also 2 of the applications are still pending. 37 of the businesses were deemed ineligible because they had received some type of government assistance, whether it's the payroll protection program or some type of small business administrative loan. And then there are 78 businesses that did not respond to our outreach to them and participating in the program. So the
excuse
budget,
me,
yeah.
Adam. I just want to ask you that question. So if we go back to the previous slide, for the is these 78 part of the 123 that they're located in Temple City?
Yes.
So they submitted interest form, and you've been in dialogue with them, but they were not responsive after a while.
Right.
Am I right?
We did about 5 different groups that we reached out to, and kind of the later groups, 3, 4, 5, we saw less of a response from people either replying or letting us know they're interested, or just didn't respond at all.
All right, thank you.
So the budget that was ultimately agreed upon with the county was $276,500, and we have a balance approximately $177,000 right now. We have issued almost $50,000 worth of grants. There are some pending that are reserved, or about $40,000 there that are reserved. We have used about almost $9,000 worth of consulting fees, and that's with someone that through Wildan Engineering, who used to work for HUD. He's been a good help. We kind of had some unique situations with some of the business owners, so they've been able to help us out a lot. And then we're going to talk about round 1 of the LACDA Small Business Grant Program. So we did hear about the program, but staff, or the city staff, decided to run our own program. The county did partner with 6 other cities in LA County in their first round, and we had reached out to some of those cities. I believe 4 of them responded and said that they were satisfied with how the county processed all the grants for them on their behalf. And the program was actually very successful, and they won a national community development award, the Audrey Nelson Achievement Award for the program. So the LA County Development Authority staff did reach out to city staff and see if we were interested in participating in round 2, which will be starting within the next month. So they've kind of given us a timeline. We'd be doing outreach starting next week. We would have businesses submit some interest forms through their website, and they'd basically be running the whole program, taking in the applications, processing them, doing the random selection, but the staff would still would check with us to see if there's any issues with any of the businesses, or if they are located in Temple City. So they would check with us as far as selecting the actual recipients. Sorry, I don't think I updated this one. There are 37 businesses that have received some type of government assistance that I mentioned earlier. So right now, our estimated balance right now, almost 177,000. That wouldn't be able to. We wouldn't be able to issue grants to all those. We do have an unallocated balance right now of 143,000. Those are funds that carry over from the previous fiscal year that aren't spent, or they're loans that are paid back to the city. This number actually may increase. I think we have 2 loans that will be paid back soon to the city, previous home improvement loans. And then one option that staff is also going to recommend is that we borrow from next fiscal year around $143,000. The county just started this program a couple years ago. They call it the revolving grant program. So kind of like Temple City, where we only get so much of our allocation a year, we could borrow from our future funds and do a bigger project now rather than wait or try to break it up into different phases. So staff is recommending to increase the budget, the current budget, by adding the unallocated funds, borrowing some additional funds from next fiscal year that would total $366. And for the next year's programs for fiscal year 21-22, staff is recommending to allocate $36,000 for that program to process 3 grants. This program is included in the city's required housing element to assist low and moderate households. So it is a required program. Also another recommended program would be the asbestos and lead-based paint program. That is associated with the handiwork or the home improvement program. We would recommend $10,000 for any testing or abatement work that would be required for those projects. And lastly is the youth scholarship program. We still don't know when things are going to go back to normal, but we would still recommend a budget of $20,000, and then we could always adjust it from there. And with that, staff recommends that the city manager or that the city council adopt a resolution that allows the city manager to amend the programs that you approved tonight, and then also increase the funding for the small business grant program, and then establish programs for next fiscal year. There's just kind of a summary of what I discussed earlier. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. All right, before I get to council questions, I just want to add that I believe that in your report, you actually left out one probably big recommendation, and that was to remove the provision regarding the business grant program that we had installed originally, that those who had already received other funds could not apply for this fund. That's one of the recommendations, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. So that's, I don't know, kind of to me a big deal. But we'll see how the rest of the council feels. So, all right, why don't we go ahead and start with council questions? We'll start with Councilmember Mann, if there's any questions for staff on this matter.
Thank you, Mayor Chavez. Yes, one question I have is, during the course of outreach and back and forth with businesses who submitted interest forms, do we know the reason for a lot of them being non-responsive? I guess what I'm alluding to is do we see any, I guess, language barrier issues with some businesses who maybe may not understand exactly what they need to do to fill it out? Or was that apparent at all, or is that something we don't really have any good info on?
I can't speak to that. I don't know if most of the people that reached out to us did do it in English. So I don't know if anyone had specifically requested any translation help with filling out applications or anything.
Just
If I can add in there that with the temporary residential rental program, we did have applicants who we could tell needed some assistance with a language. And those we did provide assistance for, and we've even translated those applications into Chinese. But we didn't have the same response or issues on the small business side.
Okay, and I guess most of these, the communication was initiated by the applicant side, right? We from our standpoint, we didn't go after all of the applications who came in, or is that part of our process, the follow-up?
You're talking about when, so the first step was for the businesses to submit an interest form that they're interested in participating in the program. And then we went through the list by the different tiers and contacted those businesses by email. And a few of them, we did try to contact them by phone too, as far as them trying to submit the required paperwork.
Okay, so I guess the primary mode of communication back to the applicant is through email or phone, right?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to see if there's a reason for some of the non-responsiveness, and whether that's something, for example, I mean, I don't want to volunteer the chamber, but we in previous meetings with the chamber, there have been some members that have, I guess, alluded to the challenges of reaching out to certain businesses because of the language barrier. And a few have actually brought up and mentioned if they could be of some assistance. So I guess what I'm suggesting is if we're moving forward with the second phase of it, perhaps there could be some coordination with the chamber to see if that's part of what we want to do when we're going out for the second.
Something, Councilmember Mann, something we can definitely do, working with the chamber as a partner in the outreach effort.
Yeah, they're going to need more specific direction though, because obviously this program is being administered by us, so we're really in control here. But if there's an element of that where they can help, I would encourage us to see if there's that opportunity.
Yes, sir.
Thanks. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Sternquist, any questions?
Just about the youth scholarship program, is $20,000 the amount that we usually set aside? I can't recall if it was more than that or not.
Previous years, we've done closer to 25 or 27,000. That's typically what we allocate for that program.
And Adam, have any of the funds been expended during the months that we've been in the pandemic to assist children of low-income families for some of the programs that we've had online where there is a cost?
We haven't, or I haven't reported any youth scholarship, the CDBG funds. I don't know if, I know there's another grant that the city offers. I don't know if that they've used any of their money for that.
Okay, so we're just setting that amount aside in hopes that we're going to use it?
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Mr.
go ahead.
Gulick, I can interject since it's recreation programming. Councilmember Sternquist, this is for the allocation for the fiscal year 21-22. So, you know, it's starting in July of this year, running through June of 2022. It's our hope and anticipation that programming will resume to a, relatively normal level by hopefully fall. So that's where we would anticipate, hopefully we do have money to allocate out for those low-income residents for that programming. Unfortunately, during the pandemic, most of the programs that we've run really haven't had a cost component to it, or a very minimal one. And that's the reason why, there really hasn't been a need, at least for this current fiscal year. But the reason why we were plugging in a slightly lower amount was with the hope that we would return to, semi-normal programming in the next fiscal year.
Right. I think with that being said, it might be wise to put in 25,000 then and go back to the original amount. Because let me tell you, if things open up by summer, everybody's going to be in youth programs just to get out of the house.
Sure, that's something that we could take a look at. I do know that a significant portion of our youth scholarships would typically use our summer camp program, and we don't anticipate summer camp taking place, this current into next fiscal year. Because it is still, close. We just wouldn't anticipate that. So that's why we recommended a lower amount, because we knew, that large program wouldn't be utilized for, for that fiscal year 21-22.
Okay, thank you, Adam. No further questions.
Okay, Councilmember Vizcarra, any questions for staff?
Well, I had one related to what Cindy was talking about. Now, what are the mechanics of the scholarship program? How are the folks selected?
Sure, the Councilmember Vizcarra, for the youth scholarship program, it's all income based. So they have to demonstrate that they are either low or a severely low income households. And based on those applications that we receive, they would be designated, one of those two classifications, and then they would receive, a prorated amount for participating in the city-run programs. That's also information that we submit through the CDBG program. So we provide that verification of their income status, that they would qualify for that program. In terms of getting the information out, we have it on the city website. We've done some direct mailing and outreach to the low-income populations in Temple City. But it is something that we're always constantly looking at, trying to find the best ways to get that information out there to that population that does need access to this type of program.
Okay, and on the lead-based, how do folks know that that's available, that they might be something they could use? I've got some properties at the city where I'm at. I've used that, and it's very effective. But boy, 10 grand wouldn't go very far.
Well, those funds are usually tied in with someone that's doing some minor improvements to their house under the Handiworker Grant Program. So we would be required to do testing on whatever area is going to be where the work's going to be done at. So they would do the testing, and then if there's any, usually it's more containment, not removing the items or doing anything major like that. That's usually under the bigger projects under the home improvement loan program that would require the more funding for that.
And that money's separate from that, which we allocate for the Handiworker program?
Yeah, it's a separate program, but they go hand in hand with each other.
Do we typically expend it all?
It depends. It depends on, because it really depends on what kind of improvements are being done. If they're doing a lot of work where they're either removing like old AC equipment or roof material that may have asbestos, then it would require some funding there.
Okay, thank you. That's all, Tom.
Thank you. Mayor Potemia, any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I must say I have a little trouble following the numbers this time, so bear with me if I ask a number of questions here. Starting with the temporary rental assistance program, actually, I didn't see much of that discussion in the staff report. So let me start with the PowerPoint. You said that there are 65 low-income, we assisted 65 low-income houses. How much do they get every, how much does each household get?
The program works where we would give up to $1,000 per month for up to 3 months. I think there was only one household that had an amount that was a little lower than $1,000.
Okay. So how much have we expended thus far?
What would that be?
I don't think I see that in the report at all.
That one's probably close to 190, a little over 190,000.
So how many people, how many households had applied?
Don't have that up. Sorry about that.
Well, if you don't have it, maybe you can come back with it.
Okay,
That's
yeah.
based on the analysis. Yeah. So based on analysis you've given, so we have helped 65 households. I was just curious how many households actually had applied and we reject them. And if we do, or we did, what would be the reason? And sounds to me like you said here 6 more households can be assisted, meaning that we have 6 more, we have budget for 6 more, is that, or do you mean 6 more household applications are being processed?
I think 6 more $3,000 grants are available right now.
So we should encourage people to apply who, if they have not.
Yeah, they could still apply.
Yeah.
Okay.
On the website, we continue to receive interest forms. That application process continues on.
Yeah.
Because we never know how many people within each cohort are going to be approved or not going to be approved. So we keep adding to the list over time.
Okay. And this is 2021 rental assistance program. Is this program continuing, or is this a one-time thing from the county?
That's a one-time program that we established. There are limitations on that. It is considered a temporary rental assistance program, so we could only assist people one time through that program.
So in other words, once it's done, then we cannot, the county does not allow us to do the temporary rental assistance program anymore.
We could
once it's exhausted funds, sorry.
Yeah, we could establish a new one, but we wouldn't be able to assist the people that have already been assisted. They would have to be new people.
Yeah, the reason I asked, because I think based on what I'm reading here, you're recommending continuing with the small business grant program, and I don't see anything recommending continuation of the temporary rental. Is that the recommendation?
Not continuing, just adding more funds for this fiscal year for the small business grant program. We didn't recommend additional funds for the rental program just because we've pretty much done a lot of outreach and kind of try to target specific properties that other people that have applied for the program to see if there would be people that would be interested in the program. But we've had a hard time trying to issue all of the funds for the program.
Wow. hard to believe, but okay. So I guess staff is recommending continuing the small business, but just finish up the funds on the temporary rental assistance.
Correct.
Okay. Moving on to small business grant. You said 151 business submit interest forms on your PowerPoint, but when I read the staff report, you said 131. So there's a bit of a discrepancy in numbers here. And then in your staff report, you said that 51 businesses submitted an application, and then 32 were set aside. And in your PowerPoint, it says 37. So there's again a discrepancy. If I take 51 minus 32, that leaves 19 applications. Whether or may, I don't know, somewhere around 19 anyways, because there's a discrepancy in number. So I'm curious, of the 19 applications submitted, why only 6 application was approved?
Sorry, I'm trying to pull up the staff report. Some of the numbers since we started the staff report, we have gone through some of the applications. So the one in the PowerPoint is more up to date.
Okay, great.
Adam, maybe you could speak to the question about what's the most common reason that applications are denied?
Well, the primary reason is that the businesses have received some type of financial assistance from another government agency, whether it's the payroll protection program or the small business administrative disaster loan.
So how many applications did we actually receive?
Let me pull up the. So 123 of the businesses did qualify. So the ones where we actually received applications would be 45.
Okay.
45 applications.
And even within the 45, a number of them were rejected? Because you only approved 6.
Yeah, so 37 of the businesses were ineligible because they had received some type of assistance already.
Okay. So you're recommending, so the ones that got approved, because they don't have any assistance, so if we were going to continue this program, does that mean that the 37 who got rejected will be eligible now?
Yes, with the staff report, we'd recommended removing that, and then those businesses would be eligible for the program.
And okay. So perhaps, I was just wondering if the unresponsive ones they kind of disqualify themselves because they've been getting their assistance. So maybe we should reach back out to them again.
Yeah.
And the final question, on this round 2 LACDA Small Business Grant Program, is that a second batch of funds, or what do you mean by round 2?
No, it's just, well, I don't know about the county, but they may have received some additional funds that they're going out to do or to assist businesses in the county. But I think there's some other cities that, I don't know if they're new cities or the ones that have participated in round 1, maybe came across some additional funds and they're wanting to participate in the program again.
It's on your slide. It says round 2 LACDA. So are we participating or not? I'm a little confused here.
That would be staff's recommendation to participate in the county's program. They have dedicated, they've actually pulled staff from other programs to dedicate their time on this program. So that'd be the recommendation.
Does that mean more funds?
No, if I can, to provide some clarity to the different rounds. So all the rounds that the county is participating in is based on the same set of funds. The county first reached out to some jurisdictions and partnered with those jurisdictions to help them spend their CDBG and CARES Act funds. After that work was complete, they were very happy with how effective that program was. And so they've reached out to other cities who have not spent down their CDBG and CARES Act funds. And now they're reaching out to those cities to help them spend their funds down before the end of the fiscal year. That second piece is the round 2 that we're talking about. So we would be within the county's second try at helping cities spend these funds down by the end of the fiscal year.
Okay, so it's just basically using up our unspent funds.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when we're suggesting that we should borrow from next year's CDBG fund so that we can help the small business that did not get funded this time.
Correct.
Yeah, we've seen such a need by the list of people who have already submitted business interest forms that we believe that there's enough demand to meet the supply of funds that we have.
Okay, that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Okay, well, where do I begin? Maybe kind of a follow-up on Mayor Pro Tem Yu's theme, but I'm looking at your slideshow here, and then I'm looking at the staff report, and the numbers are not the same. So maybe if you go to the last slide that you had up, where it allocated the different amounts to each program, or at least the recommendation. Yeah. So, right. So I've got, I don't know, maybe. So how much are we allocating to the small business grant program budget? Because on the staff report, it says 562,000, but if I'm looking at this, it's 463,000. So I don't know where these numbers are coming from. Maybe can someone help me to understand what exactly is the amount?
Sorry, the 562,000 is does not include the total program budget, which was $276,500. I apologize for that. On this slide here, I'm only showing the estimated balance that we currently have right now for our program. So it would be the just under 147,000, the balance, plus the the unallocated and then the borrowing from next fiscal year's funds. So the numbers are different there because it doesn't include the funds that we've already expended.
That's a weird noise. I've never heard that one before. Okay. So my question is, and I think I heard you correctly, that we are going to be borrowing from next year to add to this small business grant program. But I don't quite understand why we were borrowing if we can't even get rid of the funds we already have. Is that an anticipation, I guess, of getting rid of those funds? I'm assuming.
So maybe I could provide a little bit of clarity as well. So what we're trying to do in the sense of, if you go, Mr. Adam, if you could move up just a couple slides to the. We're taking what the 30 plus applications that came in that had that funding those, and then the remaining balance working with the county's program to fund the rest so that all of those that are in the pipeline, or excuse me, would be in the pipeline are funded. And then the county through their program could reach out and fund additional programming. Is that an accurate way of describing it, Scott, Adam? And if I'm not, please correct me.
Yes, we have 37 businesses had indicated in their application that they had received some type of assistance already.
Do they have to reapply, or we just automatically now provide them with the funds?
They would have to reapply since the county, if we go with the county, they have a intake kind of like similar to what we established, kind of just some basic information. And then once they're selected, then they would provide the required paperwork.
So to me, it seems like there's some ifs there. One, if they do reapply, and that's an if. Assuming they do, then okay, there's 37 businesses. If the council tonight agrees to do away with that restriction that was in there before, and then am I hearing you correctly? You're also counting the 78 businesses that were unresponsive as part of this this budget?
No, no, we would not.
So where's the rest coming from?
The 30, the way we're looking at it is that 37 would essentially be encumbered as part of and reserved. As you're stating, we wouldn't know if all 37 of those, but they've already kind of gone through the gauntlet of being vetted. It would have been approved if not for that one element of receiving other government funding. So we
Okay, so let me stop you there. So would the 37 businesses then take up the $562,000?
They would take up, go ahead, Scott.
No, the 37, the way the program is currently established is they can receive up to $10,000 apiece. So if the council moves forward tonight, what would we be looking at doing is trying to make as big of an impact on the small businesses in the community by removing the obstacle that has been the greatest obstacle to spending the funds, which is the limitation on receiving additional federal funds or some other funds. So if we remove that, we believe that there's sufficient demand to make to not only use up the remaining allocation that we have in the existing program and our unallocated budget, but also the budget for next year.
So 37 times 10,000, that's 370,000, correct? So the additional 200,000 would be set aside for additional businesses that maybe were unresponsive before and maybe can now be eligible under the proposed new guidelines.
Yeah, so the goal would be to find 20 other businesses in the community that need assistance, and that's why we'll be doing outreach.
Okay. All right, I understand that. So my other question is, on these funds, all these funds are coming out of one pot, so to speak. Can we, for example, and I think other council members kind of were alluding to this, add another 5,000 to the youth scholarship, add another 20,000 to the rehabilitation program? Can we do that with these funds?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Yes, it's the council's prerogative to adjust these numbers any way you like.
Well, the reason I bring that up is that in the report, it appears that at least for the housing rehabilitation program, we have 18 people on the waiting list who probably could use some of this money. But there's been no discussion about how we're going to resolve that 18 on the waiting list. Is the 66,000 sufficient to take care of those who are now on the waiting list?
There is a large demand for the housing rehab loan program, and it was looking the only fund that can't be used or that is very limited is the CARES Act fund. And those funds have to be used for certain things. But based on prior conversations with council seemed to want to really focus on assisting the small business grant programs and on helping the temporary residential rental assistance program. If the council wants to provide additional funding to the housing rehab loan program, that would be fine with staff. We have had a much larger budget in the past, and there's also a large demand for that. So that's perfectly acceptable.
What was the budget in the past? Now we're asking for 66. What was it previously?
Adam?
Last year, we had some that were already under contract, so I think that amount was maybe somewhere around 100,000 for both the housing rehab program and the asbestos program. I think some years we've had it as high as 350,000, just because we usually use some of the unallocated funds on that.
I understand the push for businesses, and certainly there's no question that businesses have been hurt by the pandemic, and but it doesn't. And again, I understand that because of restrictions we had in place, that cut out at least 37. Do we know that, but for those restrictions, those 37 would have definitely qualified for these monies?
We did not go through all of those applicants. There's a lot of paperwork that needs to be submitted for these programs. So to save staff time, we did kind of just go through the application, and if they had received some type of assistance, then we would just notify them. So we did not go through and actually see if they had a low moderate income employee or if the business owner themselves were.
So it would probably be fair to say that some of those 37 may still be ineligible, even though we removed the restriction of receiving prior monies. Would that be a fair assessment?
That could be a possibility.
Yeah. Okay. As far as the restriction, removing the restriction, because that appear, and again, to me that was the big deal here, but it kind of got glossed over for whatever reason. But essentially, we're not really being asked to change anything other than that. And that, obviously we've got now more money to deal with, but the big issue, of course, is to remove that restriction of receiving prior assistance. And if you recall, and I think the discussion when we set this restriction is the reason for that was to get the money to those who needed it most, not to those necessarily who already had received funds. And so that was the thinking behind that. Obviously, that for whatever reason didn't work. My question to staff is are you aware of any other type of restrictions that either the county or other cities are putting on these type of business grant funds other than the fact that they've received monies from other programs? In other words, I don't know, based on size, based on employees, based on earnings. Are there any other type of restrictions that would at least try to get the money into the hands of those who need it the most?
I believe some of the other programs that had discussed, or the other cities that discussed their programs, Arcadia and Claremont, they had focused on, I believe, ground floor retail businesses and restaurants. So some of those did just specifically target those types of businesses. I don't know if they excluded other types of businesses, but the program is set up where they're intended for small businesses, so our program has a limit of 25 employees or less, including the business owner. So
Okay, so that's one restriction, that it's got to be 25 employees or less. But we've not added any restrictions like it's only restaurants or only clothing stores or something like that.
we
Right.
did establish the tiers as far as trying to assist giving priority to the certain businesses.
Okay,
So
and is
was
that, will that still be in place after this evening?
yes, whether it's staff moving forward with the program or if we work with the county, we'd be able to do that.
Okay, but that's not really included in the report. So I guess my heartburn with all of this is that I don't feel like I have the complete picture in front of me. I'm only seeing some figures, and I'm seeing a recommendation that we remove the restriction of prior assistance, but I don't see any of these other things in here. Maybe, and again, I understand that we've already gone over that, and staff may have assumed, well, we've already gone over that. We don't need to add that in here. It's already in place. But I kind of would have been nice to kind of see the whole program in one big picture again, as to what we're actually doing with this money and how we're going to allocate it, I guess you could say. Okay, well, that's all my questions. I will open up the public hearing. I will ask, first of all, the city clerk if there are any public comment emails for this matter.
Mayor, I do not see any email public comments.
Okay, is there anyone on the line do we have anybody on the line at this time?
We have one caller and their speaker is unmuted.
Okay, the caller who is on the line, did you want to comment on this matter? Okay, not hearing a response, then I will. Sorry? Hello? All right, not hearing a response, I will close public hearing. And now we are in a position to take any final comments from council. And I'll again begin with Councilmember Mann. Sorry, William, you in some ways it's good to go first because you get to say everything and then we don't have to worry about it. But I hate to put you first all the time, but go ahead.
No.
All right.
Thanks. Actually, before I make some of my points, I did have a follow-up question to
Sure, go ahead.
the stuff that you and Mayor Potem, you asked. Regarding having LACTA process or potentially process some of these applications, do we know what the response time is if we compared it to us doing it in-house? So, for example, let's just say the 37 applications that we're going to reach out and hopefully they reapply. Do we know how quick LACTA is going to turn it around versus how quickly we would turn it around?
Scott, do you want to touch base on that real quick?
Yeah, LACDA has provided Adam a schedule for what they're proposing for in terms of the program, when they would have the disbursements done and when they would be reviewed, and I'm sure Adam can give us those numbers. If the council does want to fund the program as it's being recommended, it would increase the budget, it would increase the number of applications coming in. And right now, Adam's the one person reviewing those applications and also assisting with planning at the same time. The county has moved some staff around in order to provide a lot of personnel so that these applications can move quickly. Adam, do you remember, can you give us a schedule?
Yeah, their timeline is up on the screen right now. So March 1st would be when they would open up the online applications. March 1st through the 5th. March 8th through the 12th is when they would do the random selection for each of the cities, and then the cities would also be able to review and approve those businesses. And then going through all the paperwork. They're estimating between March 15th and the end of April.
Is there a possibility, like, I think, I forgot who asked earlier, but I think the question, businesses that have already applied, do they need to apply again? And so the answer is yes, if we have LACTA involved. But would it be, I'm just looking at it from the business standpoint, if they've already submitted this stuff, would we be able to turn it around faster since we already have all the information for the existing? I'm speaking specifically to the ones that have already applied.
We could essentially do that. I would talk to staff about how quickly that turnaround would be. So we could essentially segregate out two programs. One, the program with the businesses that we worked with, and then the secondary program. So that's the idea was, and staff had kind of talked about this as kind of ending one program and starting the next one, which would be this one with LACTA. But we would have to come back. We'd have to come back with you on timeline of how quickly we could do that.
Yeah, because my concern is the window for the application for LACTA is very small. And so given how busy everyone is, I almost want to say there's going to be a lot of folks missing that window. Whereas for those that have already applied, we already have that information. So I guess I don't really want to direct staff to do one or the other, but I just think it's worthwhile to think about that alternative. It just, at least from a service to our business community standpoint, I'm more convinced that processing the existing applications ourselves seems like that's something we can move on right away instead of waiting another month for the online application to be there. I mean, it's very subjective, like in terms of, how quickly and what's the definition of an expeditious processing and getting the money to the people that need it, right? But for me, it's like if we can do it faster, well, why not? That's sort of my point. So that's something I'd like for everyone to consider. I'm generally in supportive of having LACTA help us if we're talking about a new batch of applications coming in. Especially, I know staff has reported back to us that it takes a lot of time to go through a lot of this stuff. So I would be supportive of that. And I would be supportive of some of my fellow council members' comments about potentially increasing funding for some of the other programs that, like for example, the housing rehab as well as the youth scholarship. I would be supportive of that as well. What was the other one last thing? I lost my last thought. but anyway, I think I agree with the general idea of the way that staff is allocating and prioritizing and more or less keeping the same the tier system that we had originally discussed at the first go round. I support removing the provision that disqualified businesses from qualifying for this program if they've received some other loans. I think, in hindsight, if we could have changed that, maybe we wouldn't be running into this issue right now. So hopefully, I would ask staff to maybe as those existing applications are being processed to come back and report to us whether we can confirm that that's really the case, or are there other things that have disqualified them. And I would encourage us to be more active in reaching out to them for this. Anything to cut down the amount of paperwork that they have to submit to qualify for it, I think it's to the benefit of the community as a whole. I think having to repeat the application process if we already have the information is just, in my opinion, an unnecessary additional burden to place on the business community. Thank you, Mayor Chavez.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Sternquist, any final comments?
I have a couple of questions, if I may, and maybe Greg can help us with this. Today I received an email, and it's from the round 2 of the small business COVID-19 relief grant programs from the governor. And those are grants also between $5,000 and $25,000 based on eligible annual revenue. And I believe the application period will close on Monday, February 8th at 6 p.m. So Greg, I know William mentioned loan. Was the first round 1, was that a loan or actually a grant? And how would this work side by side with an application, so you could basically get a grant from the governor and then another grant from the city and already have qualified for a loan that exempted them from getting any money from the city? Does that make sense?
So in the previous round, some of the funds from the state or federal government were called loans, but they were what we would call a forgivable loan as long as certain conditions were met. When the city set up this process earlier on in the pandemic, it was the council's decision that any entity that got state or federal help, because they qualified for that, would not be eligible for city help. Now, obviously, we're much later in the pandemic. The state and federal help has aided entities, but as staff has described tonight, many of those entities continue to need help. So you as the council have a policy decision to make as to whether in this next round, you want to say that if somebody does qualify for the governor's new grant program, then they're disqualified from yours, or whether you want to keep it open and let any entity that qualifies for your program receive the funds based on what you've heard tonight about past usage. That's the best I can give you. This really is a policy decision for the 5 of you. I'm happy to support it and help your staff work through how to make it go. But that's about all I can offer right now, ma'am.
Okay, so I would be inclined to say that if a business in our city qualifies and would be awarded a grant from the governor that's larger than the amount that we're giving, that they decide, do you want the cities, do you want the larger amount from the governor? I do have some heartburn with someone getting $10,000 from our city and then getting an additional $25,000 or potentially $25,000 from the governor's round 2. It seems that the timing is difficult because we're trying to rush through to get people help. I don't know how quickly people would hear from the governor's program, but I'm sure there's a way to say, if you got a larger grant from the governor's program, then the next person in line could get the grant from the city. But let me understand also, when there were people in tier 3 that did not get any grant money from the city, correct?
That's
Right.
correct. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and for whatever reason that might have been, I mean, I think that I would like to see some of the money available in round 2 go to some of those tier 3 people if they've already gotten a forgivable grant from the round one or the governor's round one also. Just my thoughts. I mean, I really wasn't aware that the round two for the governor was pretty much coinciding with what we were doing this evening, because I just got the email earlier today. But I mean, those are just my thoughts. I mean, I think that I'd like to see some people who never got any monies, any amount of money, go to them in the next round if the people who already did get assistance from round one from the city were able to qualify for the governor's round two. I know that sounds like a whole lot, but I'm trying to compartmentalize it in my brain. That's really my only thoughts. And I don't know how that would work or how long it's going to take for the governor to, you know, issue those grants. I just have no clue.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Viscar, any final questions or comments?
No, I think this has been beaten pretty well, but I'm thinking about what Cindy said, and doesn't seem that that would be in our purview. I don't know. Could a city control that? I would think it'd be all state. Anyway, that's my thought. But that's about it. It was well spoken. Oh, and William, as you get older, you're going to have more and more of those situations where you lose a thought. It happens to me constantly.
Thanks for the warning.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Yu, any final questions or comments?
Muted.
Not coming through, Vince.
All right. Now I'm good. Well, I kind of like what the mayor said. I think what's confusing is that we don't seem to quite have a roadmap here. But I guess the saving grace is that we're really here tonight approving the city manager's ability to amend the funding allocations and also setting the budget for next year. I must say the individual policies are very confusing, and I still don't have a very clear picture. But actually earlier, the reason why I asked about the rental assistance program was that I was going to suggest initially that if the businesses, the small business loan program or grant program did not have money left, we should use it to help renters. Because I don't know, it's hard for me to intuitively believe there are only 68 or 65 low-income households in the entire Temple City with 10,000 households. But what I heard was that, we have reached out all we could, and we only could assist 65 households. So I would like to suggest the city manager go back and relook at that to see if there's any other way, because we'll be approving, at least as it's suggested, that you have the ability to change the funding. I have no problem in agreeing with you, changing, reallocating up to 50% of the funding, but I personally is really confused policy-wise as to which program should go to. There's something a little not quite right, because the council had decided last time that we were not going to help businesses that already received government financial assistance. But if what I'm hearing tonight is that we couldn't give away money for the rental, we couldn't give away money for the small business grant, and so we have to fall back on this other way of giving away money. In a lot of ways, I agree with the mayor said that, we have people that are waiting to get the housing rehabilitation program. Why don't we use our money to people that really wanted it? And instead of chasing people that, at least in previous discussions, we did not think should be receiving the assistance, much like what Councilmember Sternquist had said earlier, because they already got some form of financial assistance. But that doesn't seem to be the topic for discussion tonight, and because I look at the recommendation tonight, is really authorizing city manager to amend the funding program and adopt a new budget. So,
Okay, thank you. I think if one thing this council has always done, and that is when we have a sum of money, we always look to see how we can kind of get our biggest bang for the bucks and who we can help out the most. And that I think went into a lot of the thinking on the first go around as far as the allocation between the renter assistance program and the business grant program. It appears that the renter assistance program has certainly been taken more advantage of. I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Yu, however, that it's hard for me to believe that there are not more people out there that could use the help, especially with today. There's talk of the eviction moratorium maybe going away and different things that whether we've done a sufficient job in making sure that people out there know about this program, I don't know. I think we have, but that maybe that's the problem. As far as the the grant program, I don't necessarily, obviously, we made a policy decision that we would restrict it to only those who had not received prior assistance. It appears that has not worked out, and it's staff's recommendation that we go away from that restriction, and that in their opinion, certainly that would help to get this money to those businesses. Again, that's a little bit of speculation as to who that's going to help, if it's going to help all 31 businesses or whatever it was. And then, of course, what concerns me are the 78 that simply were not responsive. Why they're going to be responsive this time around, I have no idea, but certainly they didn't have an interest back then, and still the same money. I like the fact, and I wish that we could come up with some type of restriction to again meet that goal of getting the money into the hands of those who really need it. As Councilmember Sternquist said, there are other programs out there, and I would rather see it go to those who have not qualified rather than to give it to those who are basically double dipping at this point. Our limited funds are limited, and I would, of course, like to see it get into the hands of those Temple City businesses who really need it. I don't know how we do that. I haven't heard anything tonight that really would say, okay, this is how we're going to do it, because it seems like we do have other restrictions in place right now. I haven't heard anything that perhaps would help us to make that decision. I do think, however, and I think I've heard other council members, and I agree with them, that some of this allocation, and again, Mayor Pro Tem Yu, I appreciate your comments regarding giving Brian Cook, our city manager, the right to kind of, allocate or change some of these allocations and apply the money where perhaps it's more needed. But I think at this point, it wouldn't be a bad gesture for council to maybe set that policy, and then of course keep that in place where Brian could, of course, change those. But I really, to be honest with you, I think I see the need for adding some funds to the housing rehabilitation loan and grant program, especially considering the numbers of people that are out there that are waiting for these, putting money into the hands of those who really can use it, short of and really put it to good use. I think the youth scholarship program, as Director Matsumoto said, I think hopefully in the fall we're going to be able to start offering these programs again. And I would be willing to bet that given the economics of what's been going on for the last year, there are going to be a lot of people out there who maybe wouldn't have otherwise applied for such program, maybe now do that. So adding some more to that probably wouldn't be a bad idea as well, since this is, again, for 21-22. I don't know that much about the asbestos testing removal program other than what Councilmember Vizcarra said, that it can be very expensive. It seems to me that $10,000 doesn't go a long ways. One of the questions, I don't know, maybe what has been the budget on that in the past? I know the recommendation is 10,000, but what does anybody know what that's been in the past?
It's corresponded with, as Mr. Gulick stated before, it's kind of corresponded with how the housing rehabilitation loan has gone up. So, 40, 50,000 in prior years has not been unusual, but again, it kind of goes, as Adam has said, it kind of went hand in hand with the housing rehabilitation program.
Okay. Well, to me, I think staff has identified that there are needs in 3 particular areas: the housing rehabilitation, the asbestos, the youth scholarship program, and we still have a marker for those. My feeling is that we should, at this point, perhaps add some monies to those, as you see on the screen right now. And then, of course, that would take away a little bit from the small business grant funds, but at the same time, the monies would still be, there would be sufficient monies there for certainly the ones that were turned away initially, the 31 businesses that we know perhaps are going to come back and reapply again. There still would be sufficient funds for that as well. I'm just, and again, I maybe this is the lawyer in me coming out in the, settlement and then reaching kind of compromises. In looking at the figures, I would say, for example, the housing rehabilitation program, instead of 66, let's go with 80. In the asbestos program, instead of 10, let's go with 20. And with the youth scholarship program, instead of 20, let's go with 25. That wouldn't break the bank, so to speak, but at least help those programs because they are going to need it, we know, hopefully in the next 6 to 12 months, which is what we're talking about. But at the same time, still give the small business grant funds the necessary monies to take care of the businesses that are going to want that money. So those are my thoughts. And so unless there's any other questions or concerns or comments, we are now in a position, I think, to entertain a motion. Does anybody like to take a shot at that? I know it's going to be a kind of a long motion, it seems like, but.
Mr. Mayor, I'll take a shot at it.
Okay, go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
I move that we authorize city manager to amend CDBG funded program allocation up to 50% of the approved allocation tonight, and then adopt resolution 215509, approving a substantial amendment to the 2021 small business grant program, and establish the CDBG funded programs allocation of fiscal year 21-22 with the fiscal year 2021-22 program housing rehabilitation loan and grant to $80,000, asbestos and lead-based paint program to $20,000, and youth scholarship program of $25,000.
Okay, so that's the motion. Do we have a second? Cynthia, I can see 2 of you. There's 2 of you on the screen. Which one are we going to take the vote from? The one on the right or the one on the left? You don't get 2 votes. You don't get 2 votes. Okay, so we have a motion. Is anybody going to second that motion?
I'll second.
Go ahead.
Okay, so we've got Councilmember Sternquist has seconded that motion. So Madam Clerk, if we could, without any objection, could we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Mann,
Yes.
Councilmember Sternquist,
Yes.
Councilmember Vizcarra,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Yu,
Yes.
Mayor Chavez.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you. I want to thank staff. I know it's a difficult situation and sometimes we have questions, and I want you to understand that our questions are not meant to in any way lessen the work that you've done. It's just that you guys are the experts, and we're the ones who unfortunately have to make those decisions. And I think there were some good questions by council tonight to really try to get a handle on what we're doing here and try to reach the right decision. So I want to thank staff, and I want to thank my fellow council members for the discussion tonight on this. It was not an easy decision, certainly.
Mayor
Okay,
Chavez?
so yes, go ahead.
Just to thank you, Mayor Chavez, and just to let you know, I appreciate the trust you put in me and the authority given. But as always, if and when I would make those adjustments, I would make sure to inform the council via memo or other mechanisms so that you are informed and you're fully aware of any adjustments that are made. And I would either make that back in a city manager's report or a consent calendar item at a certain point. So that won't be done without your knowledge and understanding of what those changes are.
Well, and I thank you for that. And I think our vote tonight indicates that our trust in you doing that, as you always have done. And I don't have any, I think we all understand that you have done that consistently and will continue doing that. So thank you for that. Okay, so we will now move on to item 9, unfinished business. There is none. And now we're going to move on to item 10, new business, potential changes to the Crossroads specific plan. City Council is now going to consider initiating an amendment to the Crossroads specific plan and the zoning code related to grocery stores, public food markets, housing and mixed use, tenant subdivisions, land subdivisions, and condominium subdivisions. Sounds like a whole lot of stuff there. So I will turn that over, first of all, to our city manager, and I'm sure he will then pass that off to Community Development Director Reimers for a report.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Chavez and members of the council. Before you tonight is really an iterative process in terms of really beginning a lot of the discussion and then furthermore outreach to the property owners, the business community, as any specific plan has, as it was adopted several years ago. And Mr. Reimers will go over the chronology of this plan. Always changes. The dynamics have changed, and we've gone over that significantly when we went and when we proposed the moratorium, the reasons why we proposed that moratorium, the extension of that moratorium that we did late last year, and now we're at a place where we are kind of going through that iterative public process in order to develop what will inevitably be an ordinance that amends the specific plan to address some of those issues from a development standpoint and what you've heard from some community members, but also to what you've heard from some property owners and business interests related to how they're looking at the specific plan area and how the development world is changing so that we can help to make a very robust and viable area for future development of that site. So with that, I'll turn it over to our Community Development Director.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. Just to reiterate kind of what the City Manager said, the Crossroads specific plan was adopted by the Council back in 2017. Back in February of 2020, the Council adopted a moratorium on further subdivisions and on public food markets. Later that year in October, the City Council received a report from staff on some research that staff did during that moratorium period on those two subjects. And then following that, in December of last year, the City Council extended that moratorium to July of 2021. So the pandemic has created a lot of disruption to the economy, to market conditions, to our habits. And so things have changed drastically since 2017. And part of what we're presenting tonight in this initiation of a specific plan amendment is in response to those changes. So what we're looking at tonight are some potential changes that would require housing and mixed use in new construction. It would set some regulations for tenant subdivisions, for public food markets, grocery stores, It would also add some policies to the Crossroads specific plan and set some standards for land subdivisions. And through all that, what we're trying to do is really balance the vision of the Crossroads specific plan, the city's economic goals, our housing goals, and the present ownership of land and the present leases that exist. So with this initiation, we're just proposing, what you're seeing tonight are some draft recommendations. What we'll do is we'll meet with members of the public over the next month, and then we'll be working with the Planning Commission to review some additional work that we'll be doing on it, and then this will come back to the council. So this is really just a starting place. In terms of tenant subdivisions, a tenant subdivision is when you divide an existing building in order to add tenants. So you already have a structure there and you want to subdivide it. So you, instead of having one tenant, you have two or additional tenants. What we're seeing in the marketplace is a lot of competition from online retailers, and that's creating vacancies. And part of our goal in creating the subdivision regulations that you're seeing tonight is to create a diverse mix of tenant spaces. Right now in Temple City, we have a lot of small tenant spaces along Las Tunas, even within the shopping center, in the mixed use specific plan here. You see some smaller tenant spaces, but then you also see some large ones with up to a 90,000 square foot tenant space. Also, one of our goals is to try and reduce vacancy. If it's impossible to fill the 90,000 square foot tenant space, then we may want to reduce that vacancy. And we also want to encourage development consistent with the Crossroads specific plan. And so we're trying to weigh those different goals. So what we're proposing for now, and this will likely change as we talk to different people in the community, is a sliding scale. And on the sliding scale, the largest structures, so those that are more than 60,000 square feet, they could subdivide, but they would still need to have one tenant that's 50,000 square feet or more. And that's really to create that sense of diversity, that you have a large power center with a large tenant, but then they could further subdivide into smaller units. For the CVES, those units between 40 and 60,000 square feet, they could have one tenant that's 30,000 square feet and another unit that's 20,000 square feet. So again, we're trying to create a diversity of sizes. And then in order to do that, we wouldn't allow subdivisions of certain buildings and tenant spaces, those between 5 and 40,000 square feet. Those tenant spaces that are already small, those could probably subdivide or could be subdivided to anything not less than 1,250 square feet. That's larger than the standard that we have citywide. Right now, the citywide standard is 800 square feet. So again, we're still trying to keep them on the larger size. In addition to that, if a property owner is looking to subdivide their tenant space, we would want to make sure that there are some improvements to the facade and to the landscaping. That we'd also want to make sure that those tenant spaces are at least 50 feet in depth and 25 feet in width. And they would need to have doors and windows that either face Rosemead, Las Tunas, or Broadway. That we wouldn't want to have tenant spaces subdivided to facing the wash or facing west. So that's one subject that we wanted to bring forward, and we'll be talking to the community about that as we move forward. Another one is the public food markets. So we've talked about that use a lot in the past. They do come in many different shapes and sizes. They are kind of a new idea that's coming back. And because of that, we believe it would be helpful to have a conditional use permit, whether it's in this specific plan area or anywhere in the city if it's proposed. We would want to make sure that there's some sort of finding in there to make sure that the manager has experience and that the improvements that are made for that food market are high quality. We would want to require an interior design program, and we want to set certain caps on general merchandise, on the amount of prepared foods, on the amount of liquor sales and tobacco-related products. And I think even in the document, we also talk about CBD-related products. In terms of grocery stores, we know there's some interest in grocery stores. We looked at that as well. Right now, we only have a requirement in the specific plan area that if a retailer is more than 60,000 square feet, then they require a CUP. There's no conditional use permit or no specific standards for grocery stores in the specific plan area. And what we're proposing is to, instead of having a CUP, which some cities do have CUPs for grocery stores, we would just set some performance standards. And those standards would require them, for instance, to have security cameras. It would give the director the ability to limit loading dock usage, specifically the hours of operation of the loading dock. It would require exterior windows. It would make sure that some uses are located indoors, such as recycling centers. It would require, it would have certain limitations on what goods could be sold outside, limits on alcohol sales, and some requirements on the amount of fresh food, general merchandise, and accessory uses that are sold in the grocery store. Another subject that we'd like to take a look at in this specific plan amendment is how land is subdivided within the Crossroads specific plan. So what we're proposing right now is that if you're going to be reorganizing lots, we would require that no new lot could be smaller than the existing lot. A new lot must be at least 200 feet in width and 200 feet in depth. And so this image here gives you an idea of what that would look like. A new lot would need to have street frontage either on a public street or on a private street that's built to the requirements of the Crossroads specific plan. So for instance, this long easement driveway here in the middle of the site, they could use that as the street frontage, but they would have to make some improvements to it to match the Crossroads specific plan. And then we would, right now we're proposing to prohibit commercial condominium developments.
Mr. Reimers, I'm sorry, what is a commercial condominium?
Sure. So what we're finding in some mixed use developments and even some retail developments or even office developments is that in order to fund the project, they would subdivide the commercial building into separate pieces so that a number of parties own pieces of a building. And so there's not one landowner who's leasing to multiple tenants. Each building would sit on its own airspace, and that airspace is owned by separate entities. So for instance, Camellia Square has 4 different buildings, and some of the buildings are owned by different parties, but all the parties together own the parking lot. And so then that gets into certain arrangements that have to be created through an association that works on how the site is maintained and how that site is managed.
Isn't that how the Kmart shopping center is actually broken up now? My understanding is that there are different owners of different parts of that particular piece of property.
It's not technically a condominium subdivision, it's a land subdivision each, and then there's ingress, egress easements and shared access agreements between each of the property owners for how the parking is used and maintained.
Okay, thank you.
One of the main focuses of the Crossroads specific plan is to create economic vitality by providing mixed-use development. And there's some benefits to mixed-use development that's highlighted here and in the specific plan. And so in order to achieve these benefits of mixed-use development, what staff is recommending is that if new construction is proposed, then it has to have either a mixed-use component or a housing component, meaning someone, if they're going to be building a new structure from the ground up, they can't just build another commercial-only structure. We're also looking for some additional policy changes or additions, and those policies would be to encourage high-quality tenants, to bring in regional and national retailers, to bring in tenants that reflect the diverse culture of Temple City, and look at expanding local businesses, especially those that provide cross-cultural appeal. In terms of next steps, we'll be reaching out to the community in February. We'll be meeting with the Planning Commission with a more firmed up set of recommendations. And then the Planning Commission's recommendation will be coming to you in April. You will have a chance to review the ordinance again on May 4th. And then the ordinance would become effective 30 days after that, and that's June. The moratorium is set to expire on July 7th, but the council can have that expire at the same time that the ordinance becomes effective if the council desires. They can expire the moratorium early. So again, what we're asking for you tonight is to just initiate the Crossroads Specific Plan Amendment and initiate the zoning code change as well, and then provide us any feedback you might have on the subjects that were presented in the attachment, in the staff report, or the presentation.
Okay, thank you for that report. Why don't we begin with council questions? And I think I'll go ahead and start this time with Mayor Pro Tem Yu. Vince? Can't hear you, Vince.
First of all, I must say that I like what's been presented so far, and I appreciate what Director Reamer and staff have done. I think it's a wonderful idea. I have a couple of simple questions, mainly on the tenant subdivisions, table 1 in your presentation. Seems to me like that you are proposing, so if the Kmart owner cannot, well, the Kmart owner, if they want to subdivide, they can bring it from 94,000 to 60, and then I'm sorry, 90,000 down to 50, and then they have a choice of another 40,000 square feet or 220,000 square feet. Is that the idea? Right?
Yes, sir.
But they can also, but they don't have to subdivide if they don't want to, right?
No, they don't have to, no.
Okay. And then once they have subdivided, would they be able to sell to another entity? Because I heard that you are not allowing commercial condos.
The prohibition on commercial condominiums is a prohibition on any new subdivision that created a commercial condominium. They can sell the properties as they exist today.
Yeah, what I'm trying to get to is really my follow-up question. So if they subdivide from 90 to now 50,000 and then 220,000 square foot, and then once they sell it, let's say they sell it to 3 different owners, can the new owner with the 50,000 come back and subdivide it again?
No, two things. One, because commercial condominiums are not, would be prohibited under staff's recommendation, they would not be able to sell each tenant space separately. And in addition, the standards that are shown on this slide today would continue to apply in the future. So you couldn't subdivide once and then a year later subdivide again and then subdivide again and again and again. It's looking at the column, the first column here, existing size, is based on as it stands today.
Okay. All right. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Viscara, any questions of staff at this point?
This thing brings up a lot of things in my mind. One of the things I'm wondering about is construction. How much demo and reconstruction are we going to control? Like if somebody wants to tear into the Kmart property and subdivide that and in effect make new structures on that lot, is that going to be permissible?
Yes, the goal of the specific plan really is to redevelop the site and to replace it with mixed-use development. So redeveloping the building is encouraged in the specific plan. One of the questions that often we would get is how much of a building can I tear down before you consider this a new structure? And so we have some recommendations on that. How much of the structure can be torn down before we consider it new, and then they have to build a mixed-use building.
Got the old thing about if you leave one wall standing, you don't have to get a permit for a brand new house.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So we're talking way beyond just the Kmart property. We're talking every one of those properties there.
Yeah, the specific plan amendment extends all the way from Las Tunas down to Broadway, and in some cases,
Broadway.
amendments can include the area south of Broadway.
And are we talking building up the portions of the parking lot?
Yes, the specific plan really focuses on using the parking lots for development.
I can see this getting pretty complicated.
Yes, sir.
That's why we have people like Scott to help us guide us through
Yeah.
this.
Well, that's it for now.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Sternquist, any questions?
Yes. Scott, when on the existing square foot size, where we have 1,250 to 5,000, we don't have any examples of that, but we're going to allow that, correct?
Well, in between some.
What happened?
I just lost it.
It's lost his-
I think he's frozen.
Some of the bigger boxes, there's smaller retail, there's like a Payless shoe store, there's a couple of small rents that buying and work within that. That would be acceptable.
Okay. I'm just wondering, do we really want those small places? I mean, could we start at 5,000 to 20,000?
Yeah, that's we could look at that, and we could just say if your unit is smaller than 20,000, then you cannot subdivide any further. That would be acceptable. I mean, that's a policy choice the council could make.
I just know that a lot of the, I mean, I think I've seen more of the very small businesses go out of business quickly. It seems like that's where the revolving door is, and the smaller 1,250 to 5,000 square foot built businesses. I mean, it's just something to think about, because I know that we've always, you know, voiced our, I guess, disenchantment with Las Tunas because so many of those buildings are small and narrow. I mean, not necessarily that these would, but I would think that at the Kmart site, those smaller buildings are going to be skinny and narrow also, right?
Well,
Narrow and long.
Yeah, the big boxes really wouldn't be able to get much smaller, but it's the smaller boxes that are in between the big boxes, those would be able to move around and get smaller and bigger. They wouldn't be held to the same standard as the big boxes.
Okay. That was my only question, but I think it's excellent work, and thank you so much for, you know, all the thought that went into this.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Mann, any questions?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Chavez. I notice in the staff report, we differentiate the grocery store use and the public food market use separately. And there are different, I guess, policy recommendations that we're adding to it. What if someone came in with a hybrid of the two? For example, like the H Mart on Huntington and Sunset is an example of that. The Mitsuwa Marketplace is another example of that. And I recall in the previous staff report related to this issue, staff had also cited 99 Ranch and I want to say Hacienda Heights or somewhere. And I mean, I can also name other supermarkets, you know, whether it's like a Gelson's or whatnot that have that kind of a combo hybrid. Not that I'm saying someone's going to come in and do that, but if someone did, how would we treat that application?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because just this morning I was thinking about also Target. You know, some of the Targets and the Walmarts now have a grocery section, and how do we address those issues? And that's something that we're definitely going to have to think about. I think in the attachment to the staff report, we said grocery stores can include a public food market. But I would definitely need to still think out, you know, what are these different permutations and how would they work and how are we going to define them?
Okay. Yeah, the one part I did like is, at least for the public food market use, is the requirement of an interior designer and an experienced manager. My only concern is that, at least right now in its conceptual form, it seems rather subjective. So I don't know if there's a way to kind of better define that or flesh that out, so anyone who's trying to consider an application would kind of know what the parameters are. Like what exactly does that mean? You know, and obviously we define it, but perhaps there could be some clarity on that. And I would suggest if we come up with a policy related to a hybrid use, that we treat it like the requirements from the public food market. Because I guess if I compare the two, I don't want to say the public food market is more restrictive. I would say it's more, I guess it gives us a little bit more control from a policy standpoint, or the type and quality of the development that we would like to see in that space. One other question I have is, well, I guess I kind of asked it in my comment. I wrote down, how do we define a high quality tenant? I mean, that's, I guess that's maybe something I don't think we can really answer now. But I think I would be interested to see how that gets fleshed out from a policy standpoint.
It could be, it could be how when the U.S. Supreme Court was asked to define obscenity, it's like, I'm not sure what it is, but I know it when I see it. maybe that's the high quality or the high. Yeah, I agree with you. That could be a little challenging. I'm sure we all have our opinion of what is high quality or not. So,
The old
any
Kmart,
questions?
would the old Kmart have qualified as a high quality tenant?
Well, to some people it might. Okay, William, any other questions?
Yeah, just one more. Is there any, I guess, from a planning standpoint, is it possible for someone to come in and say they want to propose a use that combines the existing structure with use of the existing parking lot as tenant? So almost like if we take the public food market example, can a public food market essentially be proposed to occupy both the building as well as an outdoor area adjacent to it, or within the same parcel?
Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything that would preclude it, except for parking. So they would still need to provide sufficient parking for the two buildings and the two uses, and that would be a challenge if they're occupying that space.
Right. Yeah. Considering the parking issue as well.
Yeah, but we do note in the public food market section that it would be permissible for them to use the public parking lot, or a parking lot, for like an outdoor sort of market once a week, but that would need to be included in their a temporary use permit or a conditional use permit, either one.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you. Okay, well, I don't have any further questions. They've all been answered. I think I like what you guys have done. I think it makes sense, and I think a lot of thought has gone into it. So why don't we move on then? I'll open up public comment. First begin by asking our city clerk if there are any public comment emails on this matter.
Mayor, I do have a request from a Mr. Sal Salazar requesting to speak.
Yeah, but before we get to him, are there any email requests?
There are no written email requests for public comments.
Okay, and so I understand that we do have a speaker on the line. And so if you'll unmute his microphone, Mr. Salazar, are you there?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine. Go ahead.
Very well. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on this item. My name again is Sal Salazar. I am a legal counsel representing BH Properties, which holds the lease for the Kmart building. I want to let you know that we had an opportunity to speak with your community development director, Scott Reimers, and we went and discussed in detail all of the proposed changes and or modifications. And he expressed to us the desire of the city council to have a robust specific plan with the goal of economic vitality and viability. I want to let you know that based on that information and the proposed modifications that that staff is proposing, we believe that this type of revisions, specifically for the my client's building, they would facilitate economic viability and would allow and foster economic development. So as it stands right now, want to let you know that we do support the proposed revisions, and we are here to respond to any questions or comments that the council may have regarding this proposal.
Okay, thank you for those comments, and they will be taken under consideration. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other people that would wish to speak? Or do we have anybody else on the line, City Clerk?
No, Mayor Chavez.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to close public comment, and we will begin with final questions and comments by council. I'll begin again with Mayor Pro Tem Yu.
Mr. Mayor, I have no further comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Member Vizcarra?
I don't either. I'm glad we're moving ahead here.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Sternquist?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Mann?
I just want to say, I think I appreciate there's a lot of thought to what amendments we change. I appreciate the report staying as true as possible to the original intent and vision of the Crossroads Civics Plan. I think I mentioned in previous meetings that multiple years, a lot, and I think the amendment process is the right way to go, and not really just scrapping everything because we want to. So I appreciate the work and looking forward to the actual developments we'll be able to review.
Okay, well, thank you. And I know you have a little special place in your heart for this, since you were a catalyst in moving this along originally. So thank you for that. I want to also thank Mr. Salazar for his comments, and I don't really have anything to add other than I think it's a good plan, and I think it's certainly something that we certainly have been looking forward to and moving forward, and I think it is moving us in the right direction as far as what we want to do with this particular area. So with that, I will now entertain a council motion.
Mr. Mayor, I would move that we initiate an amendment to the Crossroads Specific Plan and Zoning Code related to what we have discussed tonight.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Unless there's an objection, I will ask the city clerk to please take roll call.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Mann?
Yes.
Councilmember Sternquist?
Yes.
Member Vizcarra?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Yu,
Yes.
Mayor Chavez.
Yes. Okay, great. I want to again thank City Manager Cook and staff, Mr. Ramers, and those who worked with you on this. Good job and very well presented. Thank you very much. Okay, so we will now move on to item number 11, our update from our city manager.
Thank you, Mayor Chavez. I'll be brief tonight. I usually come to you with some negative stuff lately. Let me come to you with some positive stuff tonight. First off, library construction update. Ms. Kuo, City Clerk, if you can mind pulling up the pictures. Tinny Chan will give a very brief update. She listens in and participates in the construction update meetings with the county. So Ms. Chan, do you want to give a quick update?
Oh, that's what Tinny looks like, huh? Wow.
Jenny?
Good
Hi.
to see you, Ms. Chan. All right, go ahead.
Well, good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm going to give a brief update on the progress of the library construction. Construction looks to be on schedule for completion in the summer, with a projected opening date in late fall. Contractors have completed framing for the interior, and they actually conducted framing inspection today. They will be completing the drywall installation by end of this week. They will be re-roofing the existing structure, and after that's done, they will be roofing the new addition. They will be installing the ADA walkway to the library entrance by next week as well. And contractors are almost nearing completion for HVAC rough-in. The county is also coordinating with the artist on sequencing the art installation in the children's section. And like I mentioned before, as of now, construction completion is still projected for July, and targeted opening date for the new library is in October.
Hey, well,
That concludes my update.
well, thank you. That's great news. Mr. Cook?
And if I can add one more thing too, if you can move up to slide 2 and 3. One area that the county's project did not include was re-landscaping these two areas that are on Golden West side. So we worked and with some funding to try to get with Upper San Gabriel Water District and others to try to get this to be a more of a garden area as well. And we're working with Eric Marr, the architect, to see what kind of enhancements. So that right now the current plans would just be replacing grass for grass and the kind of not so attractive things you see now. We are working with them. We're waiting for some funding from Upper San Gabriel Water District, as we've done in the past with demonstration projects and other funding, to make this a neat, enhanced area as well. So we're looking forward to that. So this ugliness you see hopefully turns into something beautiful in about 6 to 9 months.
Hey, well, we're looking forward to that. I know Councilmember Sternquist is counting the days to that opening. So,
Really?
and rightly so. I think it's something that we're all going to be very proud of. So, Ms. Chan, thank you for that report and thank you for the updates. And we look forward to more in the future. Okay, is that it, Mr. Cook?
One last update as well on, thank you, Ms. Chan. Appreciate all your work, and she's done a great job of from a continuity standpoint with some staffing changes to continue to watch and work with the county on that project. So thank you. Lastly, last week we received the bid closing for Primrose Park. We received a robust amount of bids, over a dozen bids that were submitted. Staff is working and analyzing to make sure that the lowest responsible bidder, going through that process right now, and we should be bringing that back to you at your next council meeting. We as we always have, we will be talking to the standing committee as well as we talk through the process. There were some alternates as well to that project. We'll kind of go back and forth, but we're excited. I've got a lot of bids back. The other thing we'll be doing shortly after we award the bid we'll be doing a virtual groundbreaking as well. So Mayor Chavez, I know it's been a rough year in terms of not doing our normal ceremonial items, but we're looking to get a shovel in each council member's hand and doing a nice virtual groundbreaking of some kind. So we'll get that information to you as well. And that's you've on the COVID front, numbers are going down. We continue to operate in the manner that we have. Sorry, my Illuma cube just went out. But staff is continuing to safely operate, and thank you for your continued support, and thank you to the community's continued support. If there's any issue on a service side, we are available. You know, our cell phones, our landlines go to our cell phones, and we're working constantly. So if there's any issues that are coming up from a service standpoint for the community, you know, my email, my extension, 4105 goes right to my cell phone. So get a hold of me anytime. Happy to help and resolve any issues that we have.
Okay.
So thank you, Mayor Chavez.
You look like there's a spaceship landing behind your head.
Yeah, the Luma cube that I told you guys about, it just went out on me. So
okay.
It's
And
actually
you
a
want us to use it?
Halo.
It looks like a halo now. Yes, you've become angelic right in front of us. Okay. All right. Mr. City Attorney, any updates tonight?
Oh, you'll never see a halo behind me, sir.
No, not an attorney, that's for sure.
Council know that late last week, the state passed and the governor approved a state eviction moratorium that included with it a $2.6 billion congressional subsidy that will be a rent subsidy that can pay landlords up to 80% of the total amount of rent in arrears. Obviously, for landlords interested in that, there are quite a few qualifications that you'll have to go through the state's website for that. But as long as tenants are paying 25% of their rent due by the end of June, then the eviction moratorium for them will be in place. That does cover only residential tenants. Commercial tenants are themselves subject to the county's order. I had told you at your last meeting on this topic that the lawsuit was rolling along and some filings were due at the end of January. Those filings took place, but the court has not yet set a consolidated date for or to consider the demurs and other requests to be dismissed. Once we know when that comes, I'll let everyone know. But essentially, your residential tenants are covered by both the state and the county, and your commercial tenants are covered by the county. So I think you're in a good position from that regard. And that's really all I have from legal today. Kind of an interesting time.
Thank you. Okay.
Yes, sir.
We will now move on to item 13, council reports regarding ad hoc or standing committee meetings. I know that Councilmember Mann and I had a school district city standing committee meeting recently. Councilmember Mann, did you want to report out on that meeting?
Yeah, sure. I could say a couple of things and maybe you could.
And yeah, I can add something to it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, last Thursday, Mayor Chavez and I met with the Temple City Unified School Board Standing Committee members, Donna Giorgino and Matt Smith. It was a good meeting. It was good just to exchange information. I think that was the big takeaway, was just to know that they're dealing with similar challenges related to COVID, but also very different challenges in terms of the way their budgeting works is much different than how we work with ours. And what was really interesting was that, as we all know, a portion of their money is based on student attendance. And so I think, Mayor Chavez, you asked them, well, if all the students are remote learning, how are they determining your funding? And so the answer was, they use last year's attendance to base this year's allocation, which I thought that was interesting because when you asked that, Tom, I was wondering the exact same thing. I was like, how are they accounting for that? But I do want to say I appreciate Mr. Cook for your updates on city operations, as well as we had Miss Veronica Luna provide an update on all the Parks and Rec activities that we've been doing in light of COVID-19, how we've adapted and gone virtual basically for the most part. And so I really appreciate you all sharing that with the school district. We offered a helping hand on any issues that they might contend with, like for example, procurement of PPE for when schools may reopen. That's still up in the air. That situation is as dynamic and fluid as the news we're receiving in terms of the public health orders and whatnot. So everything that we discussed last week could very well change, this coming week, next week, or so on and so forth with respect to schools. But they did report back and say that in the course of the last year, they have been procuring and stockpiling PPE in anticipation of schools reopening. And Ms. Marianne Sorrell gave a pretty comprehensive update of the inventory they have and how they're going to set things up at the school sites.
Hey, thank you. That was a very good report. I don't really have anything to add other than just to kind of say, the school board has obviously faced a lot of the similar challenges that we have here in the city, and have seemed to adapt. They have a good superintendent. They have some good leadership, and they are working through it just as we are. Obviously, their issues are communication, use of facilities. I know they have ramped up their maintenance program, as well as hired a new risk management supervisor. So they're doing all the right things, and of course they're still in the dark as to when they're going to ultimately open up. But it was a good meeting, a lot of good discussion, and actually we've already got another meeting set for April. So we're hopefully going to meet at least every couple of months until we see a need to have meetings more often. So thank you for that. And anybody else? Any other ad hoc or standing committee meetings? Nope. Okay. So with that, we'll conclude item 13. We will now move on to item 14, council items separate from the city manager's regular agenda. I'll start with Council Member Mann.
Thank you, Mayor Chavez. Just quickly, first of all, I'm looking forward to the virtual Lunar New Year celebration. I believe it's on February 12th. Is that right, Brian? Yeah, so I know our Parks and Rec staff are putting a lot of work into it, and I've also been in communication with Lucy Liu, who's working on behalf of the Temple City Chinese American Association to put some of that programming together. So I know they're putting in work. It's a different type of effort than trying to do a physical event. So I really just want to say I appreciate everyone's efforts in putting that together. I also want to mention earlier, I think we saw Captain Mark Reyes on the line. I don't know if he's still on, but yeah, at our last law enforcement meeting, it was a pleasure to see him through Zoom and have that introduction. And just want to extend another congratulations to him for his promotion. And yeah, I mean, our sheriffs have always been doing stellar work on behalf of our community, and we hope we continue that relationship under this. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Yu. I'm still here. I appreciate that.
Oh, I didn't see you.
There he is.
Good to see you.
I was going to say that the discussion on the CDBG funds probably, you know, let him go. He went screaming into the night, maybe. See, one of the things, at least by attending the meetings, you'll certainly hear things and learn things that you never thought existed, probably.
I already have. Yes, sir. That's
Yeah.
correct.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Mann. Councilmember Sternquist, any final thoughts?
No final thoughts, but I have a question. I received a phone call from Stephen Tai, council member, I believe it's San Dimas. But he asked me a question.
Don't believe a word he says, by the way.
And I really thought I had an answer for him, but then I thought, well, I was going to ask all of you and call him back tomorrow. But he asked me who's responsible for the overgrowth of trees on the neighbor's property when the tree belongs to the other neighbor. And I thought it was the responsibility of the person where the overgrowth was hanging. But is that not correct?
That's
Well,
an old question.
That sounds like a legal question. I'm not sure that that's something that the council, unless I know the answer. I don't know whether Mr. Murphy wants to chime in on that, but that sounds like more of a personal problem than anything else.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I will say I actually dealt with one of those early in my career. That's absolutely a neighbor legal matter. I'm happy to talk to Councilmember Sternquist tomorrow if she needs, but yeah, don't want to give that kind of advice online.
Okay, I do know that in South Pasadena, when the overgrowth was from my parents' property onto the house next door, and they wanted us to take care of it. So I went to the city, and the city in South Pasadena said, it is absolutely not your responsibility to take care of the overgrowth on the neighbor next door. It's their responsibility, which I was very grateful for, but we worked it out together, and we actually took the tree down and split the cost. But I didn't, for some reason, I thought that it was the overgrowth is always the responsibility of whomever it belongs to. But okay, I will just talk to you tomorrow and then call Steve back.
Steve should ask his own city attorney, I think.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I'm a little offended since Mr. Tai and I sit together on the JPIA executive committee, and he knows I'm an attorney. Why he wouldn't pick up the phone and call me with that legal question concerns me a little bit, but that's okay.
Because we're buddies.
Oh, I see.
That's why.
But you're not an attorney. All right.
No.
All right. Council Member Vizcarra, any less comments?
I'm just wondering one thing, William, how are they going to do a virtual Lunar New Year?
My understanding is a lot of the stuff is being pre-recorded, and they're going to play out the event. So
it's going to be like watching television?
Yeah, and I believe we're asking for a lot of submissions, video recordings and submissions from our residents and organizations, etc.
But there won't be anything on the ground.
I don't think so, right? Yeah.
Yeah, just curious. That's about all I have.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Yu, any final thoughts?
As been mentioned, Lunar New Year is next week, so February 12th. So for those of you who celebrate Lunar New Year, Happy New Year, and wishing everybody a very healthy and safe New Year. Okay, safe and healthy to all of you. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I echo the same comments. Actually, February is going to be a very busy month, I think, for many of us. Not only do we have the Lunar New Year, but we also have, of course, the Camellia Festival. It's in a way, this is kind of the last month of our cycle as the current makeup of the council. And it's, I was thinking about it the other day. It looks like we're going to all go out with a bang here because we have a lot of stuff on our plate. But that's a good thing. Keeps us busy, keeps us out of trouble. So, again, I want to wish everybody the best. Happy Lunar New Year, of course, and looking forward to the Camellia Festival and all the other things that we have on our calendar over the next few weeks. And that's all I have. So we will now move on to item 15. Madam Clerk, are there any emails or requests to speak at this time?
Mayor Chavez, there are no email requests to speak.
Okay, do we have anybody on the line?
There are no public callers.
Okay, so I will go ahead and close public comments. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned. Thank you very much. Everybody stay safe, stay healthy. And if I don't see you soon, we'll see you sooner than later. So
Get
take
your
care.
shots.
All right. Yeah, get your shots. All right. Take care. Good night, everyone.